a mountain with a dungeon appeared out of nowhere. He thought, why was there a dungeon in modern Japan? He added that it's similar to the dungeons in another world. As he entered the dungeon, he felt some sort of familiarity to it. He felt that he might have seen this dungeon before. 2 weeks ago, when he was on summer break, he fell into a hole that was on the ground. When he regained consciousness, he was already in a different world. The king was asking him to defeat the Demon King and save the world. He replied that he doesn't want to, and that he can't because he has an entrance exam next year, and he added that his school will resume within 2 weeks, so wanted to go back to his world. The princess interrupted, saying that they will return him back to his world. She further explained that world transit magic requires a lot of magic stones, so they might have to wait for a while. The guy asked, how long will it take? And the princess replied that they have used all their stockpiles to summon him, and that in 50 years they would have enough magic stones, as long as they don't get killed by the Demon King. The guy was shocked. He replied that he wanted to go home immediately. The princess answered that if he defeats the Demon King, he would be able to go home since the Demon King has a pretty large magic stone. Several months later, he is fighting inside a dungeon. He decided to defeat the Demon King, to be able to go back to his own world. But he was summoned here because of his potential as a warrior. He thought that if he didn't get stronger, then that means that he is not that different from a normal person. Few minutes later, he was healed by the princess. He said his thanks, and the princess replied that from now on, he needs to start acting like a warrior. She was worried that he was almost killed by a first-tier slime. He replied that he feels that he is getting stronger, but it's not like they can see their levels. So they need to fight cautiously. Then he asked if it was okay for a princess to come with him, alone inside the dungeon. The princess replied that he doesn't need to worry about her, because she is strong enough to defeat low-tiered monsters. The she added that she will act as support to help him recover quickly. That way, he will be able to fight with less breaks, and that would be much more efficient. He replied that it was a bit too grim, but the princess replied back, saying that she would support him until he learns how to heal himself. A year later, he just defeated a minotaur. He was excited that he defeated a low-tier dungeon boss. The princess sighed. She couldn't believe that it would take him a year just to complete the low-tier dungeon. He replied that since he learned magic now, he will be able to complete the next dungeons faster. He then asked why is she still following him. He added that he is able to use healing magic now. The princess replied back saying that he can't use magic if he runs out of mana. He was about to reply, but he was cut off by the princess. She said that she will accompany him until he is able to make potions, since depending on healing magic is dangerous. Then he said his thanks, while thinking that the princess was a tsundere type. 6 months later, he completed the next dungeon, and he is now able to make potions. The princess said that he was naive. She then asked him how many dungeons does he think exists. He replied by asking, do they really have to complete all the dungeon? Then he added that, isn't the Demon King their main priority to defeat? The princess replied that the Demon King is incomparable to the dungeon bosses. He won't be able to defeat him unless he can complete dungeons easily. Then, the princess said that it would be troublesome if Ryuji dies, so she wants him to train harder. Apparently, the guy's name is Ryuji. Ryuji said that he thinks it is unnecessary for her to accompany him in the dungeons from now on. The princess replied back, saying that if he runs out of mana inside the dungeon, it would all be over. She added that normal potions don't recover mana, so she will accompany him until he can make mana potions. 5 years later, they are fighting a dragon dungeon boss. The dragon was lunging towards the princess. The princess thought she was about to die, but Ryuji was able to cut off the dragon's neck in time. As they were walking back to the village, he said that they might be able to fight the Demon King in 2 years, since they're halfway through all the dungeons. But the princess was downhearted because she almost dragged him down. Ryuji answered honestly, saying that with his current abilities, it would be hard to protect her and fight against monsters at the same time. And since he can make mana potions now, he wants her to wait for him in the castle. The princess angrily slapped him with her backhand multiple times, then asked for a treat. Ryuji then said that he was glad that Daenerys was on her side and said his thanks. The princess's name was Daenerys. Daenerys then said that the people of their world cannot defeat the Demon King, but if it's him, then he might be able to win. 10 years have passed. He almost died many times, but finally, he defeated the Demon King. Back in the castle, the king is thanking Ryuji for defeating the Demon King. The king thanked him on behalf of all the inhabitants of their world, but the king asked him if he is sure that he wanted to go back to his own world. He proposed to Ryuji that he wanted him to marry Daenerys and take after his throne. But Ryuji said that he wanted to return to his world because he wanted to see his family again. This revelation shocked Daenerys. Daenerys was unable to stop her tears from falling. But despite being heartbroken, she still casted the spell for Ryuji to return to his world. Seeing the spell in action amazed Ryuji. Ryuji says his goodbye to Daenerys, but Daenerys, still crying, shouted to Ryuji that he should just shut up and go home already. Ryuji fell down, returning him to his world, where he was greeted by his childhood friend. She was Mitsuhashi Kayoko. They have been in the same class since they were kids. Ryuji said that she's been the same as always, then asked why was she still in middle school. This confused Kayoko. Ryuji thought that didn't 10 years have already passed. He asked to borrow Kayoko's mirror, and he saw himself that he was returned to his age back when he was first transported. Even though Daenerys was sad that Ryuji didn't choose to stay in their world, Ryuji went back to his home after 10 years. He was unknowingly staring at his mother, which made her mother ask, "What's the problem?" Ryuji just made up an excuse, that it felt like he was in a different world yesterday. Her mother was amused, saying that he might have had a bad dream. Then her mother told Ryuji that they will be going shopping, so he needs to take care of the house while they're gone. Ryuji told them to have a safe trip. A few minutes later, Ryuji decided to go into a convenience store to buy some food and drinks. He was glad that he was able to return home. After buying everything, he went back, but Kayoko was looking for him, saying that his parents are in trouble. His parents were driving, then suddenly a truck crashed into them. Unfortunately, both of his parents passed away. Disheartened by his parents' death, he thought that there might be something wrong, that the moment he came back to his world, his parents immediately got into an accident and died. He thought for all the possibilities. Is this a curse from the Demon King? Or the price for subjugating him? Few hours later, Kayoko helped Ryuji after the funeral. Ryuji thought that he might have defeated the Demon King and came back to his world, but suddenly, a loud shout can be heard outside the door, shouting that they were Ryuji's acquaintances and that from here on out, it's their family and their relationship. A group of people entered, and the man started asking how much he got from his parents' insurance. It was his uncle. Then her aunt said that all the money from the insurance and the inheritance should go to them. And that was because Ryuji was still a child, and the law dictates that he won't be able to get anything. Then her aunt threatened him that they will call the police or worse, send him to the juvenile center. Kayoko fled the scene by saying she will go home, while Ryuji's uncle and cousin rummaged around for things they can take. Ryuji's other cousins pressed him to give the money and asked for the land and home certification, and her aunt asked where the jewelry was placed. Ryuji thought, what are his relatives? No. What are these people thinking? Immediately disrespecting his parents' death, this angered Ryuji. He said that he can't give the money and his parents' belongings to them. His uncle's family pressed him further, saying that he was the head of the Tanahashi family and that it is obvious that the branch household should contribute to the main household. Ryuji shrugged the off by saying that kind of excuse won't work on him, and that they're old yet they act like a bunch of idiots. This made his uncle angry even more, so he asked his sons to teach Ryuji a lesson. The three idiots ganged up on Ryuji, and his uncle said that they should avoid the face and hit Ryuji someplace where it wouldn't show. The three idiots all punched at the same time, but to their surprise, they didn't hit Ryuji. They looked around and they saw Ryuji standing in front of the door. Ryuji thought that his cousins are slower than second-tier goblins, probably slower than first-tier slimes. His 3 idiot cousins ganged on him up again, saying that he shouldn't dodge the punch and stay still. Ryuji thought that, don't they feel pathetic saying those words? They tried to punch him again, and they hit the door. Ryuji's uncle and aunt asked if they're all right. Ryuji answered yes, but he was immediately cut off by his uncle and aunt. Worried, his aunt and uncle hurried to their sons and asked if they're okay. While they were attending to each other, Ryuji casted hypnosis to them. He told them that they won't be able to speak or move on their own, and that they would answer his questions truthfully. Ryuji asked if they're constantly extorting property by deceiving and threatening others. His uncle, with a smug look on his face, replied, that they do, and that was because he was smart. Ryuji didn't expect that. Hypnosis was a skill that wasn't useful against the Demon King. He thought that the people in this world have a very low magic resistance, so it was effective. He thought that for now, hypnosis should be used to extract information from other people. Her aunt handed him a bunch of condolence letters. Ryuji thanked them and told them that he will take the half of each. Then they bid farewell and thanked Ryuji for teaching their sons who have no common sense. Ryuji told them that he will send them the half of the condolence gift so they don't need to visit him. Ryuji hypnotized them to take all their money from their bank accounts and also borrow money from consumer finance. After that, they put all the money in the condolence letters. There wasn't much money, but he hoped that they will learn their lesson and stop extorting others. Ryuji was left alone. He sat in front of his parents' ashes. He thought that if he was in the car with them, then his parents wouldn't have died, and his uncle and aunt wouldn't have come. He questioned whether he did the right thing or not. After some time being alone, he felt the sadness creeping in, and for the first time he cried in front of his parents' ashes. A few weeks later, Ryuji and Kayoko was walking their way to the school. Kayoko asked him if he saw the news. Ryuji said that they had a good harvest this season. Kayoko corrected him that it wasn't that. She said that the news said that dungeons have appeared all around the world. Ryuji answered with an uninterested face. Kayoko then further explained that dungeons that are similar from the games have appeared. She added that there are monsters appearing inside the dungeons, and all the militaries around the world started researching it, but they didn't learn anything. And that in Japan, opposition parties are making a fuss over the JSDF's dispatch was a violation against the Constitution. She then said that with the appearance of dungeons, all the resources have dried up. The experts said that if this continues, they won't be able to maintain their civilization, and that they might end up going back into primitive days. Ryuji was worried because he won't be able to watch anime. Kayoko said that the government called for an emergency resource meeting, but the opposition parties are protesting and causing trouble. Ryuji asked why, and Kayoko answered that she doesn't know. She said that they're probably just against the idea, and there might still be time until it's necessary to hold one. Kayoko added that the appearance of the dungeon and the loss of resources seems to be related since the timing was too perfect. Ryuji told her that he will try to look onto it too, and Kayoko said that even the internet is in chaos. Unbeknownst to Kayoko, Ryuji didn't have any intention in looking it up online. After the night has fallen, Ryuji sneaked towards the dungeon. He thought they seemed to be on high alert, but it is easy for him to sneak around because of his transparency spell. He thought, why would dungeons suddenly appear in their world? And as he walked inside, he thought that the entrance seemed familiar. As he walked down the stairs, he realized that the dungeon that he was in was the dungeon from the other world. He thought that, did the dungeons got transported alongside him? If that were the case, then he already has the experience. The first level was slime, and the second level was goblins. As he traveled further inside, he thought that it might really be the same dungeon that he conquered back in the other world. He traveled even further, and it only proved that it was the same dungeon from the other world. You hunt monsters the same way, and the monsters drop magic stones after being hunted. He thought that if they keep hunting monsters inside the dungeon then, they might have a solution for the lack of resources. He thought that the fact the military of each country failed proved that weapons of this world are ineffective against the dungeon monsters. then the only possible way was the same as the other world. In the other world, resources were only available inside the dungeon, and there are people who hunted the monsters and brought back the items that they obtained. They were called adventurers. Ryuji hoped that there would be people that takes the mantle of being an adventurer. Because he had the characteristics of being an adventurer, so he thought others will have the same potential. He casted the spell Escape, and suddenly he was teleported near the dungeon's entrance. His stomach grumbled loudly, which made him think that he should grab something to eat on his way home. He noticed something different in his hand. And it was the words, Level 1. And this marks the end of Chapter 1. Like and subscribe, and click the bell icon so you can be notified for future updates. For other videos like this, click here. Thanks for watching.